The theater lights dimmed just enough to quiet the crowd, and a soft ripple of anticipation rolled through the room. Thousands of people sat shoulder to shoulder, each carrying their own expectations, their own doubts, their own hope of witnessing something unforgettable. On stage, the set gleamed with polished floors and towering lights, a place where dreams either lifted into the air or fell silently to the ground. Judges leaned forward behind the desk, scanning the wings, waiting for the next contestant. They had seen countless acts, heard countless voices, and yet the promise of surprise always hovered in the air. Somewhere backstage, a teenage boy from Cebu stood alone, hands trembling, heart pounding so loudly he could almost hear it over the distant applause. He was thin, almost fragile in appearance, dressed simply, his shoes slightly worn. There was nothing about him that screamed confidence or stardom. If anything, he looked like someone who might disappear into a crowd without being noticed. But inside him lived a story heavy with sacrifice, pain, and an unbreakable belief that music could carry him beyond the narrow streets where he grew up. He closed his eyes and thought of home, of the humid mornings when the sun rose over tin rooftops, of nights when hunger was quieter than dreams, and of the voice that had always been his only escape. His name was whispered by the stage manager. It was time. As he stepped onto the stage, the applause was polite but cautious. The audience had learned not to give too much too soon. The judges glanced at their notes, some offering small smiles, others waiting in neutral silence. He stood in the center, the lights warming his face, and introduced himself softly. His accent carried the sound of the Philippines, gentle and sincere. He spoke of Cebu, of his family, of growing up poor, of singing wherever he could because music made him feel free. His words were simple, unpolished, but honest. There was no drama in his tone, no attempt to impress. Just truth. One of the judges asked why he had come all this way. The boy paused, swallowing hard, then answered that he wanted to change his family's life. He wanted to prove that even someone with nothing could still dream. The room shifted. The audience leaned in. There was something in his eyes that felt real, something unguarded. The music cue was given. The first note had not yet been sung, but already the silence felt different. It was heavy, expectant, almost sacred. He took a breath, and when he opened his mouth, the world seemed to stop. The sound that emerged was not what anyone expected. It was rich, powerful, and heartbreakingly pure. It did not belong to a nervous teenager standing on a competition stage. It belonged to someone who had lived, suffered, and survived through song. The note floated effortlessly, filling every corner of the theater, wrapping around the audience like a warm, aching embrace. Within seconds, gasps rippled through the crowd. Judges' eyes widened. Pens froze mid-air. As he continued, his voice grew stronger, more confident, each lyric delivered with emotion that felt painfully authentic. You could hear the years of singing through hardship in every phrase, the nights spent humming to drown out hunger, the mornings singing to keep hope alive. This was not a performance crafted for television. This was a confession, a release, a soul laid bare. The audience began to react without realizing it. Some clutched their chests, others wiped away tears that came too quickly, too unexpectedly. The judges exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that something rare was unfolding before them. This was the kind of moment they waited seasons to find. The boy closed his eyes as he sang, as if the world beyond the stage had melted away. In that moment, he was no longer in a foreign country, standing before famous judges. He was back in Cebu, barefoot on a concrete floor, singing to the cracked walls of his home, believing with every fiber of his being that his voice could carry him somewhere better. And somehow, impossibly, it had. The song built toward its peak, and when it arrived, it hit like a wave. His voice soared, powerful yet controlled, filled with longing and resilience. The audience erupted before the final note had even faded, applause crashing like thunder. Some people stood without realizing it. Others shook their heads in disbelief, mouths open, eyes shining. When the song ended, there was a brief moment of stunned silence, the kind that happens when people need a second to process what they have just experienced. Then the theater exploded. Cheers, whistles, clapping so loud it felt like the walls might shake. The boy stood frozen, eyes wide, breathing hard, unsure how to react. He bowed slightly, overwhelmed. The judges stood as well. One of them pressed a hand to their heart, visibly moved. Another wiped away a tear without trying to hide it. They spoke about his tone, his control, the emotion that poured through every note. They talked about how rare it was to hear a voice like that, especially from someone so young, so unassuming. They asked about his life back home, and when he spoke again, his voice trembled, not with fear, but with gratitude. He told them about his parents, about struggling to afford school, about singing at small events and on the streets just to earn a little money. He said music was the one thing that never abandoned him. As he spoke, the audience listened in complete silence, hanging on every word. Then something extraordinary happened. One of the judges reached for the golden buzzer. Time seemed to slow. The boy did not understand at first. He looked confused, glancing between the judges and the audience. The judge smiled, eyes bright, and pressed the button. Golden confetti erupted from above, cascading down like sunlight made solid. The audience screamed. The music swelled. The boy's hands flew to his mouth as tears streamed down his face. He dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by disbelief and joy. This was the moment every contestant dreamed of, but few ever experienced. For a poor teenager from Cebu, it felt impossible, unreal, like a dream he might wake up from at any second. The judge rushed to the stage, wrapping him in a warm embrace. Words of encouragement poured out, telling him that his voice was a gift, that his story mattered, that the world needed to hear him. The boy sobbed openly, unashamed, the weight of years of struggle lifting all at once. As the golden confetti continued to fall, the audience chanted his name. Strangers cheered for him as if he were family. In that moment, borders disappeared. Language no longer mattered. All that existed was a voice that had silenced a room and united thousands of hearts. Back home in Cebu, news of the performance spread like wildfire. Neighbors crowded around televisions. Family members cried together, watching the boy they had known all his life stand on one of the world's biggest stages, his dream unfolding in real time. The streets that had shaped him echoed with pride. His story became a symbol of hope, a reminder that talent knows no boundaries, that greatness can rise from the most humble beginnings. The boy's journey did not end with that golden moment. If anything, it was just the beginning. He returned to the stage in later rounds with the same humility, the same raw emotion, each performance carrying the weight of expectation and the fire of determination. But no matter how far he went, that first audition remained unforgettable. It was the moment the world heard him, truly heard him, and could not look away. For viewers watching at home, his story lingered long after the episode ended. It reminded them of why they fell in love with music in the first place, why talent shows mattered, why stories of resilience could still move people to tears. In a world often divided by noise and negativity, a single voice from a poor teenager in Cebu had cut through everything and reminded everyone of the power of hope. He had stepped onto the stage with nothing but a dream and a song, and he had left with the world listening.